Hi, welcome. It's Friday. Hope your day is going well so far. And as we come to today, we come to the end of the book of Joshua. And some interesting things that we can certainly talk about and look to here in our reading today. And when I was putting this together and thinking about what I might mention to you, I was looking towards the famous phrase that many of us have heard over and over, where Joshua talks about his family and talks about choose this day whom you will follow, and he says, as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. And I thought, well, that would be a nice one to talk about. But then I thought of this curious story in Joshua 22 that we don't really ever hear preached on or talked about. I thought, well, that might be a little more interesting. And so that's what I thought I would really point out and highlight today as we look at 22 through 24. And if you remember in Joshua 22, we're coming to the end of at least this period of conquest, though as we understand, Joshua is now old, and the conquest is going to have to go on without him because there are still the Philistines and the Phoenicians and some areas around Jerusalem that have yet to be taken. There are pockets of Canaanite peoples still living in there, and we know that this struggle is going to go on for hundreds of years. But in the midst of it, we reach this point, and it's that point where we now move to a transition time. And I got to thinking, oh, there's that dreaded word, transition or change. Change, transitions, they're difficult even in the best of circumstances. In fact, psychologists talk about homeostasis as that desire on the part of people in any family system to find a status quo, kind of like a mobile, and balance itself, and then it wants to stay that way. It doesn't want to move, it doesn't want to adjust, and that's just kind of part of our human psyche. But I was thinking about my own life and the different times of change that have gone on. I grew up as an Army brat. We moved a lot. My family, Pam and I and the kids, have moved several times over the years. And many times it was great excitement, but it was also filled with some tears. Sometimes even the most wonderful experiences have this kind of two-edged sword with them. When Heather got married a couple of years ago, there was great excitement, great celebration, wonderful joy. But there's also those tears that, kind of get mixed in there. The thought that what happens from here on is going to be different. Things will never quite be the same. And that always kind of makes you ponder and makes you fearful and creates anxiety and even sometimes saddens us a little bit. So even in our church right now, we're undergoing some of that, as two of my colleagues are retiring this summer, and it's going to be a wonderful celebration in June as we think about their ministries, the years, over 80 years of service between the two of them, and as they'll be able to move on and mark a new chapter in their lives. But of course it will also be mixed with the tears, and that's kind of what transitions are all about, this high and low that exists within them. So here we have this account. Moses is allowing finally the Reubenites and the Gadites and the half-tribe of Manasseh to cross back over the Jordan to the east side and take possession and occupy the territory that they were promised by Moses. Remember, they were promised only when they fulfilled their duty to help the other 9.5 tribes to conquer the land of Canaan. And so we now come to this point that they did. They did not succumb to the temptation or take the easy way out and sit over there with their wives and children, but they crossed the Jordan with the other tribes and helped to take the land. And so now Joshua is giving them basically what they were promised and what they have earned, and that is sending them home. So he addresses them. We have this great, it's almost like the commencement address at a high school graduation, thanks them for their service, commands them not to forget the Lord and to obey him, and then he blesses them and sends them on their way. Well, you can imagine their excitement as they're thinking about heading home to their families, and it also, though, marks the beginning of the end of a period of their lives as the Israelites, as the people of God, who had this oneness, this unity of purpose all through their travels, ultimately culminating with this moving into the land of Canaan. They had this common task which for years held them together, and now this is kind of coming to an end, and there's this sense and anxiety underneath it all that things were never going to quite be the same. So they cross back over the Jordan, and in the midst of that, they decide to take very seriously Joshua's call to remain obedient. So they cross the Jordan, and they build an altar. And they build this altar to help remind them of the altar that's at Shiloh, and also of their unity as God's people, and that they would never forget. And it reminded hopefully the other tribes of that same unity that they experience, even though separated by this boundary, by this river. Well, with memories of Achan's sin fresh in their minds still, the other tribes see it and immediately jump to a conclusion that they have already gone away, because that has been kind of the pattern in the past, gone away from God and now have already started building altars to other gods. So they get a group together and literally take their armies, and they're ready to go do battle against their brethren over this. And so we learn a number of things about this. Certainly, number one is change is difficult. It produces anxiety in people, and it causes them to think in different ways. The other thing I think we learn about this is that rumors, whether they're true or not, need to be examined. They need to be weighed in light of the facts, and we need to be cool-headed as we approach things that we hear and not jump to conclusions. And thankfully that was the way it happened in this case. So I think another thing we learn out of this is that it takes men and women of thoughtful courage to walk through difficult times of change. And that can be true in families, in the workplace, in our communities, even in our congregations. Dealing with change and anxiety brings about all sorts of emotions amongst people, and it requires leaders who ultimately, I think, are motivated by the truth and are also motivated by love and a desire for peace. Jesus said, blessed are the peacemakers, and I think this is an example of how that plays out when those who are called step up to the plate and say, whoa, let's look at the facts, let's kind of let our emotions sit off to the side, and let's, with a cool head and heart, walk through this together and find a solution that is, if at all possible, peaceable. And so, it's a little known story, but I think it has some great lessons for us in life, and so I thought I'd share that with you today. And I hope you have a great Friday, and we'll look forward to talking with you again.